Now there's usually 5 things, 5 checkpoints if you like, that I go through to try to get somebody's body position up a little bit higher, and these are those 5 checkpoints. The first thing I'd be looking for is whether or not somebody's exhaling properly underneath the water. And the final thing is just making sure things like the flexibility of the hip flexors and also of the ankles as well are addressed as best as can possibly be done. Hi there, and welcome to another Swim Smooth video designed to help you improve your own swim stroke by living a little vicariously through our 8 swim provers as journaled over the past 8 weeks via the Swim Smooth blog. All 8 swimmers have sent me their home video footage from around the world for me to critique to form the final stage in the process that has seen me working directly with each swimmer via our special WhatsApp group. It's our ultimate Swim Smooth coaching service when we can't meet up with you directly in person. Coming up, you're going to see how, via our unique video analysis processes, Rod, despite being concerned about being an overglider, actually needs to work on his breathing. Rich needs to address the entry and extension of his left arm when breathing to his right, which could actually damage his shoulder at the age of 71. How Frankie will learn to develop a more consistent pressure on the water during her catch with the use of a parachute. How Cecily could do with toning down her kick a tad, but only with the benefit of an improved catch and pull through via our Kicktastic specific drill sequence. How Sarah's improvement has mirrored the great Megan in many ways, but now needs to address the depth of her initial catch. How Toby could take a leaf out of Rich's book with almost an identical stroke floor, which, given that he's already got a CSS of around about 120 per 100, could be quite an exciting prospect indeed. How Wendy could benefit from using the crossover stroke insight within the Swim Smooth Guru to monitor her left arm crossover, and how David, who we started off with there in the video, can work to reduce his sinky-leg syndrome by working on his flexibility and overreaching. Now, this is not a short video at around about 56 minutes. Each swimmer will get around about 7 minutes of airtime. So we've made it easy for you with chapter markers down below in the description that you can use to navigate around the video. I've produced this video much like myself and all of our Swim Smooth certified coaches would deliver a 1-day Swim Smooth clinic. So if you're keen on taking your swimming to the next level, head on over to swimsmooth.guru/coaches to find your nearest coach. And if you're a coach yourself, why not consider heeding the coaching tips in this video to improve your own video analysis skills using our 7-day online video analysis bootcamp, where I show you exactly how to refine your own video analysis skills. Okay, I really hope you enjoy. Let's get started. Okay, so let's start off by having a little look at Rod's stroke to begin with here. Now, with Rod, it looks like he's actually filmed this video clip directly from the TV or something like that. It's looking a little bit grainy, but nonetheless, we'll have a little look at this and see how we go. Now, we've got this playing in slow motion at the moment, but if we just raise it up there to full-time speed, we can get an indication of how he's swimming. Now, Rod identified himself from our swim types paradigm as an overglider. But I'm pleased to say that he's actually moving pretty well here. In fact, he's actually got quite a nice rhythm about his stroke. You can see, though, there are some remnants of a little bit of a catch-up. So if we draw this yellow line through his head here, and we look at the circle out in front of the head, in theory, there should always be one hand forwards in front of this yellow vertical line here in the circle, but not so long that the two hands almost catch each other up. And you can see here, look, that the two hands get quite close to actually catching up. So Rod's not really pulling through very well with the right hand until the left one actually enters into the water. So the left one on the recovery here can't be generating propulsion because that's going forwards. And if the right one is stalled out in front of his head, then that can't be generating propulsion forwards either. But nonetheless, if we just watch this from the side and get rid of those lines here, and again, just watching this at real-time speed, Rod is much more developed and much smoother than your classic overglider, I would say. When we go underneath the water and we take a little look at this, we can see that as Rod extends forwards, his fingertips are tipping down, which is good. So the classic thing that I see with an overglider is to extend forwards, and in that pursuit of trying to have this really long stroke, they invariably put the brakes on like so. But Rod's not doing that, so he's done a good little bit of research on his swimming. So what can Rod actually work on? Well, firstly, maybe a slightly better video clip. Only joking, Rod. But we can see that it's very, very grainy here. I'm just going to show you something just out of interest, just in case you are interested in the whole video analysis process. With our coach education courses, of which, if I just bring this one up here, we've got a 7-day Swim Smooth video analysis bootcamp specifically for coaches, but anyone else who's interested in learning more how to do video analysis. We talk a lot about the different types of tools that you can use, the types of video cameras, and also the different settings that you need to use for it as well. So if we play Rod here in super slow motion, you'll see that it's very, very gritty, very stop-start. Now, you could say, is that really a problem if you're going to freeze frame here, for example, and draw on a little bit of an angle to look at what his arm is looking like on that catch and pull through underneath the water? But just as a little bit of a comparison, let's take a little look at this. So in this next frame here, I'm going to drop in Chelsea Sodaro. So 2022 Hawaii Ironman World Champion, and a little bit of video footage that we took with Chelsea, starting off over here with big film crew. So this is not being filmed by this camera, obviously. This is the Ironman crew filming her just before she does her training swim here. But you'll see she's just about to pop a tempo trainer underneath the swimming cap, and as she enters into the water, let's take a little look at this. So I'm just going to play this at full-time speed to begin with. Let me just change the angle around. Now, on a couple of the other Swim Provers video clips, they've actually been shot with a frame which is actually really quite a narrow frame of view, meaning that their arms and legs get chopped off quite a bit. When we look at Toby's in a moment, he's almost within a square, and it's almost impossible to see what his arms and legs are doing. So if you are going to be filming yourself, or maybe you're a coach looking at how to do these exercises, trying to make sure that you've got enough space around the athlete. So if look, there's Chelsea right in the middle, loads of space here where I can use my little zoom tool to zoom right the way in. But of course, if you've cropped in so far within the filming, you can't actually zoom out. So being able to zoom in is quite important, and we've got the resolution there to be able to do that. With Rod's video clip over here, we haven't really got that resolution. Look, it gets very, very grainy very, very quickly indeed. This is me just being a little bit pedantic, but I'm hoping it'll be quite useful for you if you are considering filming yourself, maybe sending it off to one of our Swim Smooth coaches, so they can have a bit of an analysis for you. But it's the slow-mo that I want you to see here. So let's go and check this out, look. So again, this is Chelsea swimming at full-time speed. But if we now go to slow motion speed and just zoom in a little bit here so you can really see what's going on. Firstly, she's got that beautiful high elbow catch and pull through, look. But we're interested in the motion, because the motion tells us a lot about the rhythm and fluidity of how somebody's swimming. With some of the other swim provers in a moment, we're going to see a little bit of a stop-start sort of motion within Frankie's stroke, and Frankie's raced at a very high level within triathlon. But sometimes we need this resolution, we need this frame rate is what we're looking at here, to be able to both zoom in and then watch in slow motion. So look at how buttery smooth this is now. Beautiful. So this is at 20% speed. Now, how is it so beautiful and buttery? Well, I'm actually filming this here at 120 frames per second. Rod's video clip, if we just go back to this, will probably be filmed at 30 frames per second. So when we slow him down as much as what we're slowing Chelsea down, look at how stuttery it looks. Now, I could say that's just me being a bit pedantic, and that's fair enough. I am quite pedantic with this sort of stuff. But again, if you're interested to know a little bit more about how to do this filming, our Swim Smooth 7-day video analysis bootcamp, a little plug for you there, is quite a nice way of doing that. So what could Rod focus on? Well, one of the things which is often a bit of a remnant of the overglider, somebody who thinks a lot about their swimming, is the fact that underneath the water, Rod is always holding on to his breath. When we look at him from a side angle, this means that Rod ends up hanging on to a little bit of buoyancy in the chest and lungs, and ultimately causing the legs to sink down a little bit at the back. Now, Rod's swimming at a good level here, at a nice speed, and he's definitely not your classic overglider, but working to just improve that exhalation underneath the water for Rod would be really useful. and this is how he can do it. If we drop in this little video clip here, this is a drill which I created called, very simply, sink downs. Let's look at these 5 swimmers. They've been instructed to try to sink to the bottom of the pool. And you can see the difference between Philippe here and John. John gets stuck halfway down. Philippe sinks like a ton of bricks. What's the obvious difference? The amount of exhalation there with Philippe compared to John. John's sort of holding onto his breath. Mike as well looks quite tense. Philippe looks like he's doing yoga, sinking down to the bottom of the pool. This rate of exhalation is not only great for helping him sink down to the bottom of the pool, but if Rod was to employ that within his normal freestyle swim stroke, it'd help him to feel more relaxed and comfortable, and also help to reduce some of that buoyancy in the chest and lungs. So just one simple tip for Rod, otherwise I know he's quite diligent about his training. Okay, now let's jump to our next swim prover. This is Rich, based over in the US. So let's just bring in Rich here. Here we go. Okay, similar sort of quality with the video. Now, resolution's a little bit better, but you can see how the cameraman is just fixed in one position. What I really like about what we do with our setup, our Swim Smooth coaches are instructed that, or trained up I should say, not so much instructed, but trained up to actually follow and track the swimmer up and down the pool using a monopod with the GoPro on the end of that monopod. We've just got to wait here, obviously, see Rich swim off into the distance and then wait for him to swim towards the camera here. Now, probably the best thing to see about Rich's stroke is we can see here how his hand on this left arm recovery, his watch hand side, comes over and enters into the water very much thumbs first, and notice how that hand actually turns out there as well. Notice how that's actually connected to the fact that Rich here is actually only breathing to the right hand side. So every time he goes to breathe to the right, that left one comes in, it turns out, and he's using it like a prop to leverage himself up. Now, a couple of ways we can fix this. The traditional way, if you like, with a drill, and just going to bring in you my favorite drill sequence, the javelin drill here. Utilizing the Finis Freestyler paddles with a strap for the middle finger and the keel on the underside of the paddle. Rich could be instructed to kick on the side, drawing the shoulder blades together and back. Notice how he's got a paddle on that lead hand, extending out in front of him there. I say him, it's me, doing the exercise here, just kicking on the side. But halfway down the lap, let's take a little look at this. The swimmer would then be instructed to start to swim freestyle. Now, the paddle is designed to be very unstable on the lead hand, such that unless we enter into the water fingertips first and extend forwards, the paddle will actually fall off the hand. So if Rich is going into the water, as we just saw a moment ago, entering into the water and coming into the water thumbs first, and then turning that hand out, that lead paddle is not going to stay on the hand. This also might be a nice way to teach Rich how to breathe to that left hand side, just to get a little bit more balance and fluidity there within the stroke. Nice little artistic shot here, Rich, underneath the water. And again, just on there. But again, you can see with the framing here, we only see him just for a very, very short period of time. Let's just watch him from the front. So as we come in, let's just slow it down. Again, looks like we're on about 30 frames per second here. Things are quite gritty, quite stop-starty. And there's that left hand going in, thumbs first, and turning out there as well. And the right arm, when that pulls through, look, is quite straight on the pull through there as well. So the issue that Rich would have, when this hand goes into the water on this left hand side like this and then turns out, that's going to be putting a lot of internal rotation on the shoulder joints, which can cause shoulder pain and impingement. So if you sit up right now and do what I'm doing, arms out in front of you, with the palm of the hand looking down towards your desk or the floor, if you turn your thumbs down, we have this thumb first hand entry into the water, which is what Rich has got, and just notice how awkward that feels on the shoulders. Not something we want. So I mentioned that's the traditional way of how to fix it. The other way is if you were to strap on a Apple Watch, hook it up with our Swim Smooth Guru, swim a few laps. The algorithm that we built in here, the patented algorithm, will actually pick up, using the gyros and accelerometers within the watch, exactly what hand entry is going on within the stroke. Now, we're looking here at whether or not he's crossing over in front of the head. we can go to the hand entry angle and we can see just what sort of pitch that hand is doing going into the water. Remember, we want it to be fairly neutral. Now, this is from my swim last night actually, so I did a very hard CSS session last night, and you can see that I've not scored full marks, 4.2 out of 5. I need to be careful with this because I do have a bit of a dicky left-hand shoulder, so as I start to get tired, maybe this starts to creep back in, this old habit here. But certainly for Rich, we can go back to this and we can just make sure that he's focusing on that left hand, not going in thumb first and not turning out. That would be my big take-home point for Rich. Okay, let's look at Frankie now. Now, again, this gives us another bit of an indication about how framing your video clip, especially if you're going to be sending it on someone for a review, is really quite important. So Frankie's here, and if we just take a little look at this, from this position, you can see how that narrow field of view crops off Frankie's arms in full extension and also her feet as well. So it is a good shot to see whether or not somebody's got good body position in the water, and you can see here that Frankie has got very good body position. Remember, Frankie's raced triathlon at a very high level. You can see the definition in the quads there as well. So this is nice, but we can't really get a full picture of this. As the camera starts to creep forwards, we can see what the hands are doing and the arms on the catch and pull through, but we can't now see any sort of effect that's happening with the legs at the back. Now, you can see that Frankie's getting into this position here where she's trying to bend the elbow, keep the elbow nice and high. And when we view this from the front, we'll probably see quite a good angle, quite a nice position here at around about 120, 130 degrees. But if you take a little look at this, as Frankie is really quite athletic, muscular, well-defined, lean muscle mass here, you can really see how those muscles are straining very, very hard. And if we actually look at the pitch of the hand here, the pitch of the hand as she's pulling through is not actually pressing backwards. It's sort of turned out a little bit like this. So that shoulder will also, a little bit like Rich, be a little bit internally rotated and be putting a bit of pressure on that left shoulder there. But the whole thing just looks a little bit tight and a bit rigid. Frankie certainly knows, or certainly looks like she knows what she should be doing within the freestyle stroke. But let's just look at a slightly more relaxed version of this with double Olympic gold medalist and former world record holder in the 800 freestyle, Rebecca Adlington. Now, if we just watch her from the top, you've probably seen this video clip many times, certainly if you've been following Swim Smooth and the video analysis sessions that I do. Look how smooth and fluid Rebecca looks in the water. Now let's go underneath the water and let's take a little look at her from the front to begin with. Look, so when she pulls through, she gets this beautiful bend at the elbow. It wants to be between 100 and 120 degrees. And if we end up doing the other side as well, you can see how it almost creates this sort of a bit of a diamond shape. Look at that, 108, 108, bang on the same on each and every stroke, which is fantastic. But it's not really this position that we want to see of Rebecca. We're trying to copy the position that we've got with Frankie here. And let's take a little look at this. Now, interesting enough, you can see how video camera technology has improved quite a bit over the years. So this is actually filmed with some high definition underwater video, but back in 2011. So way before I actually started using GoPros, and it's certainly not the most recent GoPro 11 and 12. You can see that when I'm truly square on the side, that I'm also cropping off Rebecca's feet just a little bit. Again, just me being a little bit pedantic, but if you're trying to improve the way you film yourself, or as a coach trying to improve the way you film other people, this is quite important. But what we're looking for is how rigid Frankie looks in that position compared to Rebecca. Look. So look at this. Rebecca's a strong athlete, a lean athlete as well, but all the way in here, let's just zoom right the way in and shuffle it over a little bit. It doesn't look, she's got a beautiful high elbow catch and pull through as we saw, but it doesn't look anywhere near as extreme as what Frankie's doing here. There is a term which I don't really like to use called EVF, early vertical forearm, and you might have even tried this yourself. The number of times when I see people diligently trying to do this, they'll do what Frankie's doing here, look, where the elbow is so close to the surface of the water that everything just looks really stressed and strained. As a double Olympic gold medalist, you'll see that Rebecca is nowhere near in that extreme position there. but she's still moving really well here at 1 minute 12 per 100 meters. So what can Frankie take from this? Well, firstly, it would be to relax this up a little bit. I would say that she's actually getting into too extreme of a position here, as I see many videos on YouTube specifically, people demonstrating what you should do. This for me is way too extreme, and any physio worth their weight would tell you exactly the same, given the pressure and strain that this is putting here on Frankie's left-hand shoulder, especially with that pitch of the hand just turned out slightly. So let's look at it from a slightly different position. Now, one of the things that I mentioned to Frankie was head position. So if we just slow this right the way down, again, let's just check what the frame rate would be. Yeah, 30 frames per second at the very most. See how jittery it is? Not great for viewing someone's rhythm and fluidity. Very jittery. But anyway, Paul, get beyond your pedantic ways. Let's look at now Frankie's head position. Notice how it's constantly moving up and down, up and forwards like this. You see how she then tucks her chin in towards her chest here? This looks to me like somebody who's not quite sure about where they should be looking. Let me show you what I mean. Historically, swimmers have been taught to look straight down to the bottom of the pool, but that's not the case for everybody. It's the case for the guy that I'm going to show you right now, Charles. Check out his body position in the water. So one of the key things holding him back, look, is just how low and sinky his legs are in the water. Now, many of you might have seen this video clip because when Charles came back for a follow-up session, he had actually knocked off 9 minutes off his 1500 meter time. This is the same guy down the bottom. Amazing improvement. 9 minutes over 15. You've got to be pretty happy with that. When he came back, I asked him what made the biggest difference between here, and he said that during the session, I'd asked him to look more down towards the bottom of the pool. And certainly that's the right thing for somebody with very low sinky legs. However, that is not an issue afflicting Frankie here. So Frankie, she's not super high in the water, but compared to Charles, she's very high. Her head position looks like she's moving around because maybe someone's told her in the past either to look extremely far forward or to look extremely far down, and she's just not quite sure about where that head position should be. Now, Frankie actually sent through 2 or 3 little video clips, so just from different angles. Interesting enough, again, me just being a little bit pedantic about video clips. If you're going to do a video clip to send to a coach, to one of our Swim Smooth coaches, send it as one complete video clip where the angles switch and change just within one file. It's much easier to deal with. So just again, just a little bit of pedantic and just something to be to help improve the life of your coach. So anyway, we'll check off here. So Frankie, just a little bit fun here, using the stopwatch before she sets off whilst just doing a couple of laps of easy swimming. Very much a triathlon thing. Always be using the watches. But let's have a little look here. Now you can just about make out where the head's moving up and down in this position. I was actually quite surprised with Frankie's stroke rate. It's quite slow here, and if we actually just measured that, her stroke rate here is around about 54 to 56 strokes per minute. At her given swimming speed, I'd probably like to see that up a little bit quicker. If we look at why that might be the case, potentially Frankie's swimming nicely for the camera, but I'd like to see a little bit more rhythm and oomph. So one of the things I'd probably do with Frankie is to do a little bit of a stroke rate ramp test. So we'd sort of soften up that catch and pull through a little bit, get that looking a little bit more fluid, and then we'd look to increase the tempo slightly. By increasing the tempo, Frankie's not going to be able to think so hard and be so in her head about how she's pulling through a little bit more mechanically like that. We need to flow a little bit more easily. So let's look at the third and final video clip that she sent through, which is this one right here. So from the front, interesting looking pool setup here. Look, it's like a long thin tunnel. And let's have a little look at this. So clearly when you see somebody, and again we're in this fixed position swimming towards, so we're not actually tracking with the swimmer, which makes it a little bit awkward. You can see the resolution is not that great. She looks very blurry and that's just because we're having to zoom in so far. But let's just now slow this right the way down. There is a lot of movement within Frankie's stroke, up and down, so it's almost like a bounce within the stroke. Let's just watch that again, look. Even me doing it backwards there, you can sort of see it, look, it's like a bounce up and down. Now, if you start to see that within a swimmer's stroke, you can almost imagine that some of her effort must be going into downward force to proper bounce herself up, as opposed to all being pushing, sending her forwards. Now, I've got a really good exercise to help her understand this, and this would be part of the three-way improvement. So we'd soften up her catch and pull through a little bit. We'd look to do a bit of a stroke rate ramp test, or even just eyeball it. Personally, if I was working with her directly, I would just eyeball this and get that stroke rate up a little bit. But the final thing, which is really cool, is I'd actually get Frankie to wear a parachute. Now, that parachute would be done with a pull buoy between the legs, a parachute around the waist sending out behind her. Now, if you've ever swum with a parachute, you'll appreciate that that resistance slows the swimmer down, but it slows the swimmer down in a way whereby if somebody's got a little bit of a bounce within the stroke, or if you're an overglider stopping and starting at the front of the stroke, you'll find that the parachute will be constantly tugging at you, and Frankie would definitely feel that tugging sensation within her stroke. So with the work that we do on softening up that catch a little bit, so not being quite so aggressive with that EVF and getting that stroke rate up a little bit, what we should find is a little bit more consistency on the tension on the cable on that stroke, on the parachute there. So again, just one more time, look, we come up, we drop down, and we just sort of bounce, there we go, and we rise up, and then we drop down, and you can almost see Frankie's legs responding to that. Ideally, I'd like to have seen this from that side shot to see whether or not she's actually, the effect of this very, very tight and restrictive EVF, whether or not that's having the impact on the legs. It looks to me like as she really tries to get into this position, the legs then come down with a bit of a thrust at the back to sort of push herself through at that point. Okay, now then, let's look at Cecily. So Cecily's video clip is this one here. Nicely done, this one, I have to say. So all put together quite well. We can see the frame, look, framed nicely. So there's plenty of space for me here to zoom in, which is great. And if we put this in slow motion, we'll probably see that we're still on 30 frames per second. Yep, we're definitely on 30 frames per second there. But the interesting thing is if you watch this at full-time speed, now, when Cecily applied to become one of the swim improvers, she was very adamant that she defined herself as a Kicktastic. And you can see this without even going underneath the water. Let's just put this at real-time speed. You'll see where the effort is going in on Cecily's stroke. It's all from here at the back. Now, we've got to ask the question, why does this happen? So she's just slowed the video footage down, maybe within a software program. Very nice right hand entry going into the water. Rolling to take a breath. Notice how the head comes out of the water quite high. So if somebody's head pops up out of the water a little bit too high, either they're actually over rotating at that point, or they must be using this lead arm a little bit here to push down to give them that height. Something we don't want really. So let's just zoom back out. And now let's go underneath the water. Okay, interesting enough, similar to Frankie, I'd also say that this position here with the elbow is also trying just a little bit too hard. But if we watch it from this position right here, again, at real-time speed, we get an indication of how much effort is going in from the leg kick. And if we look at when Cecily specifically goes to take a breath in here, and this is very, very common to see, you'll see that she's applying downward force here with this left arm, which is propping her up to take a breath to that side, but it's not generating the forward propulsion that we really want at that point within the stroke. Consequently, over time, she's probably developed this slightly strong leg kick to generate and compensate for that. So again, just watch that at real-time speed, look. There, even on that side, look, you can see it quite clearly as she goes to take a breath in, The elbow's falling at the same rate as the hand, indicating that most of the force is being applied downwards, not pressing water back to send her forwards. Consequently, a swimmer like Cecily might develop a stronger leg kick over time to compensate for that. What's really interesting about this is a swimmer like Cecily might use a pull buoy, for example, and actually find that they swim slower. Think about our example beforehand, Charles, the guy with the low sinking legs. Most people assume that everybody swims faster with the pull buoy, but that's not actually the case. Somebody like Cecily here would pop that pull buoy in, it'd kill her leg kick, so she hasn't got any propulsion from it, and she'd probably find that she'd slow down a little bit. She would certainly find that the aerobic load, because she's no longer kicking as hard, would make it feel that much easier. Now, how can Cecily improve what she's doing here? Well, on the most part, I actually really like what she's doing. Yes, she's a little bit kick happy, but compared to a lot of kicktastics who tend to have really straight arm pull through, on the most time, at least 66% of the time, when Cecily's not breathing, she's actually getting a reasonable catch and pull through. The little drill sequence which I'd normally give to somebody like this would be as such. So we'd do a little bit of work with the pull buoy. We would do some sculling, scull number 1 specifically. So this is me just demonstrating this here on the right hand side. Nice and smooth, in and out. Pull buoy between the legs just to ensure that the only thing that's generating forward propulsion is what I'm doing here with the hands, just moving in and out there. And then once we get to around about halfway down the pool, we then go into some freestyle, and we can just focus on gathering the water. Now, both Cecily and Frankie would benefit from this particular drill, just to perhaps reach a little bit deeper and not be quite so tense and rigid about that catch and pull through, which just looks a little bit on the robotic side. Now, that drill there, combined with one of my favorite old school drills, doggy paddle, it's just a really great way to think about gathering a rope underneath the body, or even climbing up a stepladder, reaching from one rung to the next just to pull yourself along. And as you can see me demonstrating here, you can actually get up some pretty good speed when you do this properly. But speed is not the focus, of course, although it does indicate how well you're actually holding the water, especially when we're not kicking with the legs there. So those two sequences, those two drills, a little bit of sculling, a little bit of doggy paddle, and then the true kicktastic sequence is to then start your freestyle with the pull buoy still in, focus on that catch, focus on feeling the water, especially when you're breathing. But then with around about 10 or 15 meters to go, if you're in a 50-meter pool, let that pull buoy pop out, bring the leg kick back in, but not the big, strong, powerful leg kick that we have here at the start of Cecily's video clip, but a leg kick which is a little bit more subtle and relaxed. The only way she'll be able to do that is if she keeps the focus on the catch at the front there. Now, just one thing which you may or may not be interested in here is if we just go to this position, and again, this is as far out as I can zoom. That's a little bit better there, look. Put a bit of a comparison in. I did a video clip for YouTube a little while back called, it was actually a comparison between Ahmed Hafnoui and Bobby Fink in terms of their leg kick. Ahmed Hafnoui having a 2-beat leg kick, Bobby Fink having a 6-beat leg kick. Swimmers often look at brilliant swimmers like Shelley Taylor-Smith here, 7 times world marathon swimming champion. Watch how Shelley pushes off the wall with a 6-beat leg kick, and then suddenly dials it right back to this 2-beat kick. The question that somebody like Cecily might ask is, well, is that how I should be kicking? This degree of 2-beat leg kick, especially for somebody who's very reliant upon using the legs really strongly, as Cecily's doing here, is not going to be an overnight fix and not necessarily the right pathway for you to follow. I'll often say to somebody like Cecily that at the moment, she's very much rear wheel driven. We need to focus on the front wheel drive and improve the way she's catching and pulling through, albeit it's actually pretty good, but within the hope of actually just balancing her out and becoming a bit all-wheel drive. The holy panacea of efficient distance freestyle is not for everybody to swim like Shelley Taylor-Smith here with the 2-beat leg kick. There are plenty of great marathon distance freestylers who have a very relaxed 6-beat leg kick. But the point here is that if we can get Cecily just improving that catch there a little bit, and making sure she's not quite so reliant upon the leg kick, then that would certainly help. Okay, let's just come back to here. Now then, we're going to have a little look at Sarah now. Now, I didn't realise this when I was actually selecting the swim improvers. They were purely selected at random. But Sarah actually swims with one of our coaches in Felixstowe, Seamus, and a great coach. So I think this is where this video clip has come from. Now, the first thing I saw when I viewed this was how much Sarah's stroke and development reminded me a lot of Mega Megan. If you haven't seen Mega Megan, let's just quickly bring her in and then we'll come back to Sarah. So check this out. This is a development of somebody who identified initially as a bambino, just like Sarah did, who took some advice from myself on how to improve their swimming. And we've got a 3 video sequence here of how she actually improved. So let's go to our success stories folder. Let's go to Mega Megan, and we need Megan number 1, which is this one here. So this is the first time I met Megan. There's nothing really so much wrong with her stroke. It just looks really slow and almost like she's afraid to actually damage or hurt the water. It just looks like it needs a little bit more oomph. If we look at it from the top, her alignment's not too bad. If we go underneath the water, her body positions could certainly do with coming up. Look at a little bit how stochastic the leg kick. It's sort of in there and then not so much in there. So we looked at trying to improve this, looked at trying to get her rhythm up a little bit. So one of the first things I did with Megan was actually work on getting her stroke rate up and her rhythm. Many of the aspects of her stroke are actually already good at that point, albeit she was swimming around about 2 minutes 12 per 100 meters. So let's check have a little look here at her now. So first off, at full-time speed, you can clearly see that she's moving a lot quicker, around about 140 to 142 per 100 meters here. So a big improvement, around about 30 seconds per 100 meters improvement. Pretty cool. You can actually see, even from this angle, that her body position is sitting up a little bit higher in the water. She's got a little bit of a crossover here, and that's definitely something which looks like has actually gone backwards a little bit. But she must be doing something right to be swimming that much quicker. And here it is evident in the water, look. Body position, much, much better. Now, the thing that I want you to watch with Megan is watch it now over the top of the water. Tempo is up. Look at the arm recovery action. It's still very much this high elbow lead, so elbow lead arm recovery action over the top of the water. Body position here looking great. But let's leave this video file in and now change it to Megan 3. Now Megan 3 is the final video clip in the sequence of Mega Megan, and this was right before she swam across to Rottnest Island, the Rottnest Channel swim, a distance of 20 kilometers. Now, interesting enough, we had the conversation in this session around about the 2-beat leg kick. She managed to find the video clip on 2-beat leg kick within the Swim Smooth Guru and just trained herself how to do it, and the results are pretty phenomenal. We also talked about whether or not she could maybe modify her arm recovery action in the event that the Rottnest Channel swim might be a little bit rough. So you can see she's almost swinging the arms over the top. Now, many of you, especially coaches, might look at this and go, ooh, that doesn't look as nice. But the point is she's swimming here, again, 1 minute 32 per 100. And look at that body position. And look at the difference with the leg kick. So at the top here, we've got the 6-beat kick. Now Mega Megan is going with this beautifully timed 2-beat leg kick that she taught herself how to do based on a 20-minute video clip that we have within the Swim Smooth Guru. For Megan, it worked well. For Cecily, it might not be the right thing for her to do, but that's so important with your swimming. Not necessarily to look around at what everybody else in your lane or in your squad is doing, but making sure that you're actually getting the right bit of advice for you as an individual swimmer. Here at Swim Smooth, we say we're all about coaching the swimmer, the individual swimmer, as opposed to the technique. There is no such thing as a Swim Smooth technique, if you like. You can see Megan doing really well here, but even better down the bottom, and donning the Swim Smooth bathers there as well. So this looks really quite nice. So why am I showing you this? Well, I do like to go around the houses a little bit sometimes to emphasize a point. But if we now bring Sarah back in, here she is. The thing with Sarah is, as soon as I saw this, I knew she had identified as a bambino. I knew that she's had some anxiety issues and still has them to this day in the open water. So I was looking at this and thinking, well, she's actually moving pretty well here in the pool. But it's not until we go underneath the water, this position right here, that we can start to see some areas that we might want to improve upon. So the surface of the water now is here, and we can see Sarah's wrist, her elbow, and the armpit in this position right here. Now, I love this little visual. If we draw on this semicircle, most people would think it makes sense to start the catch from 0 and work all the way back to 180 to really maximize the length of the stroke, if you like. And you can see on each and every stroke here, look, Sarah's hand starts applying pressure. In fact, the hand, even on this one, looks like it's going to pop back up out of the water. And then there's a lot of downward force at the front of the stroke. Now, let's compare this with Michael Phelps, 23-time Olympic gold medalist. So let's drop him in. Here he is from the top. Love this bit of video footage. I'll zoom it in to make it a little bit easier for you to see exactly what's going on here. Look. But given the fact that Michael Phelps has 23 Olympic gold medals, is very tall, much taller than Sarah, very long levers, long arms, long legs, big hands, big feet. What's really interesting about this is if we draw on the same 180-degree arc, there look, and we zoom right the way in, we'll notice that Phelps never starts his catch from 0 degrees. It's almost like he's ignoring the first 10 or 15 degrees, this point here, spearing that a little bit deeper to ensure that biomechanically the only pressure he's applying to the water is gathering the water and pressing the water back behind him. This is allowing him to travel forwards really, really well within the stroke. For Sarah, what she has to do is she has to get through that moment of inertia, this point here, look, where we're sort of pushing down in that direction, down in this direction. We're gathering a load of bubbles with the hand, indicating that the hand is sort of grabbing all that turbulence. And this right arm, get my left and right. This right arm doesn't really start to propel her forwards until around about here. But even then, look, the palm of the hand is sort of positioned here. So it's still quite a lot of downward force to that. The left one then comes in, and as we can quite clearly see, look, the left one's going in thumbs first, like we saw Rich doing earlier on. And then we've also got this period where she's pushing down a lot at the front. It looks like Sarah knows what she should be doing, because at this point, she then starts to press that water back behind her, which is great. So how would we correct this? Well, the sculling drill, skull number 1, is actually really good for defining the right depth that the hands need to be out in front of the head. If Sarah was to do this drill, just like I'm demonstrating it here, let's just drop this in. So if Sarah was to do this drill, like I was mentioning there for Cecily beforehand, and also potentially for Frankie as well, if we've got the hand at the right depth, we'll move forwards. If we've got the hands at the wrong depth, where the elbow is down and the fingertips up, like we see with Sarah's stroke right here, the net result is we'll actually start to push ourselves backwards. So this drill is a real eye-opener for a lot of people, and if Sarah was to do it to reach that a little bit deeper, it would really help with that. The other thing I really like as well to actually correct this is the Finis agility paddles. So they're different to the freestyler paddles. They've got a little thumb holder here. You place them on, no straps for the hand, and unless you apply a little bit of downward force, just tipping the fingertips down at the front of the stroke to gather the water and press back, you'll find the paddle slopping around on your hand there. All right, so that would be my take-home point really for Sarah. Keep doing what you're doing, Sarah, but let's focus on spearing that little bit deeper at the front end of the stroke, so we haven't got this period of downward force, which is having a negative impact on dropping the legs a little bit down in the water there. Okay, let's jump to Toby. Now, Toby's quite an easy one. not that I rank swimmers by speed necessarily, but it's only natural for a coach to look at who's swimming what sort of speeds. And Toby is swimming at a threshold speed of just over 120 per 100, so he's a good swimmer. He's had a good swimming background, had plenty of time off of swimming, as many people do when they finish the sport in their teens or late teens and then move on to college and those sort of things. Watch what happens here. Now, I've got to show you this first off, if I'm being pedantic about the filming and the cropping. It's almost like we've got an Instagram square here, and you can see that there's very little detail. We can see that he's rotating the hips and the shoulders, which is nice. But because of this framing here, very, very difficult to see what's going on. So the only real information that we have about Toby's stroke is here in the first 5 or 6 seconds. If we zoom right the way in, let's take a little look at this. Now, this right arm extends forwards really well, but watch what happens with the left. The left one comes into the water, it cuts into the water a little bit thumbs first, and then that hand turns out. Who does he look like? Well, interesting enough, let's just bring Rich back in, and you'll see how similar these two swimmers actually look from this head over position. So watch this here. So we've already seen Rich, of course. There, look at that hand and how it's turning out. Now, Rich's arm comes across a little bit more in front of his head, but what I'm interested in here is the direction that the middle finger points. Let's just wind Toby back a little bit and zoom in here a little bit as well. Now, what is the commonality between these two swimmers? Both of them only breathe to the right hand side. Watch what we can see with Toby, look. So every time he goes to take that breath in, that hand turns out, and we see the legs responding by splay kicking apart. So normally a scissor leg kick can be caused by crossing over in front of the head. That's the most common way of seeing it. But if the hand actually turns out, it also throws us off balance as well. And what's happening here is Toby's legs are scissor kicking apart, creating a lot of drag and slowing him down. So we've got to be really careful about this. How could we fix it? Well, like with Rich, we could do maybe the javelin drill would certainly help with this, but I'd actually encourage Toby to do a little bit more breathing, believe it or not, to the left-hand side. You could say, well, that doesn't really fix the problem, does it? Well, it will actually help a lot with the problem. Many triathlon open water swimming events are actually on left-hand courses as well, and if we're constantly just breathing to the right-hand side, i.e. away from the course, potentially we'll actually be drifting away towards that right-hand side. So we need to be careful about that. It would be just great for Toby here to have a little bit more balance, a little bit more symmetry within the stroke there. Because for somebody who's swimming just over 120 per 100, this is just a tiny little error that if we could actually correct, it'd be great. So you could almost imagine Rich and Toby swimming together in the same training session. They're not. They're literally about 8,000 miles apart. But imagine if they turned up as one of our swim smooth sessions, one of the squad sessions, then they would both be working on a very, very similar thing to try to tune up and improve within their stroke. Unfortunately, we haven't got any underwater footage to sort of see what's happening there. But nonetheless, Toby did his best to actually get some video footage across to me there. All right, let's go to Wendy. Now, Wendy, we've already had a look. So Wendy's got 3 video clips here. The first one is upside down. Now, this is no fault of Wendy's, but again, just thinking back, little shameless plug here about our Swim Smooth 7-day video analysis bootcamp, where I'll teach you how to make sure that this never happens. This is a setting probably within the GoPro video which hasn't been changed correctly, and it's just flipped the whole video upside down. Now, it is possible for me to re-edit this and flip it around, but it takes a little bit of processing power, a little bit of time to do that. And I just wanted to show you this as a little bit of an example. So this makes things very, very difficult to analyze from, but luckily enough, we've got 2 of the video clips of Wendy which are the right way around. So let's take a look at number 2 here. Now, a little bit like Cecily, we can see that leg kick is a strong feature in Wendy's stroke. But the big thing that I'm interested in, and again, it's just a little bit hard to see here with the framing. I'm just starting to get it a little bit here, look. Is when Wendy goes to take a breath in, this left arm cuts across in front of her head, and it actually looks, we'll have to check this underneath the water, it actually looks like she does the opposite of that internal rotation. It's like she turns this left arm out and this hand actually slices through the water. Again, thinking about how somebody might track this within their own swimming, using the Swim Smooth Guru dialed in with an Apple Watch to actually pick this up, we'd look at this hand entry position. So Wendy would be getting a little bit of a warning sign here for this. I scored 5 out of 5, which I'm quite happy about last night. Wendy's hand would be cutting across a little bit more, so she'd get a bit of an indication of that underneath the water, and that give her that indication about whether or not it needs to be tuned up and improved. But we can see here, again, just being pedantic about the framing, that really the camera angle, if you're holding a boom angle, which basically a GoPro on a monopod, that monopod wants to be taken way further out over the pool. So either take it further out or encourage Wendy to swim a bit closer to the wall side there, because it's just a little bit hard to see exactly what's going on. But let's go now from the final shot, and I think we've got a little bit of video footage underneath the water here for Wendy. So number 3, here we go. So let's just test what we saw. Okay, so this left hand, now we get some confirmation about what's actually happening. So the left hand clearly crosses over in front of the head, but I'm wrong in my assumption about this hand turning down. You can see the thumbs are actually down, not up. Let's just see if that happens on each and every stroke. Here we go. And just crop out the frame there, so we just lose the shot on that. So maybe, potentially I saw just one off stroke where Wendy went like that and collapsed and leaned on the elbow, because it looks like here that she's not actually doing that. And this really is the value of video analysis and actually being able to see somebody underneath the water as well as from the top. So sometimes people send me video clips of them swimming, just from the pool deck on their phone or what have you, and that's great. And whilst I wouldn't encourage anybody to necessarily do this without checking the specifications of their phone, a lot of phones these days can be and are waterproof. So I've got the iPhone 14 Pro Max here. It does allow me to go underneath the water. You need to be very careful later on though, because when you're trying to charge it, it'll probably tell you that there's water still in the charging port and you need to wait for it to dry out. But nonetheless, getting underneath the water is really quite valuable for the coach to actually be able to see. So there we go. So what could Wendy do with this? Well, again, the good old javelin drill, starting off possibly with a little bit of side kicking first, just to really emphasize drawing the shoulder blades together and back, so that nice posture, shoulder blades together and back, eyes looking down, keeping the arm pointing straight out in front, and not allowing this lead arm to cross over in front of the head, and then transferring from there into the javelin drill with a pointy paddle on that lead hand, just to remind Wendy that when she's starting to swim, she's not crossing over with that hand in front of the head there. And if you set these paddles slack enough on the middle finger, they will move around if you're crossing over or indeed turning the hand out at full extension there. Okay, so finally then, let's have a look at David. Now, David identified as an Arnie, and I would definitely agree with that on the video footage here. So let's see what we can work out. So this is all nicely edited up. The first thing that strikes me about David's stroke is you can see here that he's swimming with this very straight arm recovery. Now, there's plenty of great examples of, in fact, let me show you several here, of swimmers swimming with high elbows, swimmers swimming with very straight arms, some swimmers with somewhere in between. So Rebecca Adlington, classic high elbow recovery over the top of the water here, look. Looks beautiful. Anna Karin from Sweden, looking very nice in this position here, look, which is almost like a halfway house between the two. Look how relaxed and fluid she looks. In fact, this is really the first point for David, is that both of these swimmers look really mobile in their upper back and shoulders. And then the final swimmer down in the bottom right is the very first swimmer I ever started coaching, Harry Wiltshire. Here he is. And he has a very, very straight arm, ballistic action over the top of the water here, look. But all of these styles look quite distinctly different to what David's doing. David looks really stiff and rigid. And in fact, his hands are entering into the water after the elbow is hit. So I do like this style for David, knowing that he is quite rigid in the upper back and shoulders. I'd be encouraging him to spend quite a bit of time in front of the television of an evening with a foam roller up the upper thoracic there, just rolling out and stretching out the upper thoracic there. That would help him a lot. But it does look quite rigid, and the elbow ends up striking the water before the hand there, look. So it's almost like an overreach. So it almost looks like David's maybe heard that he needs to, as a triathlete, maybe swim with that straight arm recovery, but he's just taken it a little bit too far. So a drill, which is designed to help you get this right, is what we call the broken arrow drill. Now this is encouraging a straight arm recovery look over the top of the water, but then this funny sort of a break at this point where the hand then spears into the water is to encourage the hand to enter into the water before the elbow, just slightly before. So what I'd be encouraging David to do here is probably practice the broken arrow drill and just try to get that elbow breaking so that these hands are actually spearing into the water that little bit earlier. My belief with David is if we go to this position, again, the cropping is just like to see it slightly wider, but there's the surface of the water, there's the body position. Of all our swim provers, David's legs are definitely of the lower side. He's very lean, as you can see that there, but all the more reason why we need to do everything we possibly can to keep the bum and legs high in the water. Things like the flexibility of the hip flexors and also of the ankles as well are addressed as best as can possibly be done as a triathlete. If you think about it, you're probably watching this video like I am producing it for you, sat down at the desk. I've actually got my legs crossed, which is terrible posture. I'm hunched over a little bit like this. Everything is almost like in a ball. When you swim well and want to stay nice and horizontal in the water, we need to open out the angle there, at the hip flexors especially, and make sure we're trying to sit as horizontally in the water as we possibly can. I've also got my feet flat on the floor, so my feet are in that sort of dorsiflex position. A good, efficient freestyler will have the toes pointed in plantar flexion. So everything about the way I'm sitting right now is terrible. As a triathlete, if you're spending a lot of time on the tri-bars on the hunched over like this, it's even more pronounced. So things like the hip flexors get really quite tight, and that actually pulls the hips and legs down in the water. That combined with the amount of time you'll be spending running and building up that ankle stability, which you need for good running, but it always offsets against the flexibility in the ankles there as well. And this will be a reason why David's legs would be a little bit on the sinky side too. So there's not really a silver bullet for fixing somebody's body position. Ultimately, David's biggest thing holding him back is the fact that his legs sink really quite low in the water. If I was working with David directly, I'd be encouraging him to look immediately at that overreach at the front and just trying to break that elbow to get that hand into the water a little bit earlier so we haven't got all this leverage pushing down at the front, which would ultimately bring his legs or sink his legs down at the back there. Okay, so I'm hoping you enjoyed that detailed look into our 8 swim provers and the advice for their journey forwards. A big thanks from me to Rod, Rich, Frankie, Cecily, Sarah, Toby, David and Wendy for being part of this great initiative. Thanks, and we'll see you next time.